Welcome to Who We Become Life Beyond Change. I'm your host, Amanda Lentz. This is a space for honest conversations about identity, resilience, and what it really means to rebuild after life changes. Here, we share stories of loss and hope, of challenge and courage, and of becoming someone new, even when life doesn't go as planned and the future feels uncertain. Whether you're navigating illness, grief, transition, or simply searching for meaning after change, you are not alone here. And I'm so glad you're here. Let's begin. Welcome back to Who We Become Life Beyond Change. My guest today is someone whose name most of you already know, but whose story goes much further than the part you've heard. My guest is a two-time Olympian with 7 Olympic medals, 9 World Championship medals, 14 Halls of Fame. She led the Magnificent Seven to the U.S. women's first ever team gold at the 1996 Atlanta Games and captured individual gold on the balance beam, the first American gymnast to ever do so at a fully attended Summer Olympics. And then in 2011, she was diagnosed with a rare form of ovarian cancer. What happened next is not the part most people know: the surgery, the chemotherapy, the reckoning with identity that comes when the thing that defined you for decades is no longer the fight in front of you, and the advocate who emerged on the other side, more determined than ever that no woman should face what she'd faced without the information, the community, and the practical support she needed. She spent years since building exactly that, and most recently through Salto Health, a platform she founded to connect cancer survivors with the resources and services they need most at every stage of the journey. I'm honored today to welcome Shannon Miller. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on.
So I'd love to start really at the beginning of your journey. And you were a competitive gymnast. And so what was it like to grow up in that world, and what did it actually look like really day to day?
Well, it's so interesting because I kind of feel like I've lived different lifetimes, but I loved gymnastics. I fell in love when I was 5 years old with the sport. And at that time, I was going maybe 1 hour a week. It was recreational. By the time I was 9, I started competing. And the hours got longer, which I loved. I begged and begged to go more and more. And so from kind of 9 to 11, I was going about 4 hours a day, 6 days a week. I also went to public school, so I kind of had my regular school schedule and then gymnastics after school. And again, I couldn't get enough of learning new skills and challenging myself. And now I was getting to compete, so I got to show those skills off, on the weekends sometimes. But, as I made the national team around, I guess, age 11 or 12, I started training about 6 hours a day, 6 days a week, 6 or 7 hours a day, 6 days a week,
Wow.
and that was on top of school, and I look back and I think, how is that even possible to
Right.
to even have the energy to do that? But I really enjoyed it. I was very goal oriented. I still am, and it just was always fascinating to me because I was constantly able to challenge myself with a new skill or a new routine, a new goal, and I think that's what kind of like kept me going.
That's amazing. And thank you for sharing that. And so, as you look back now on what you've accomplished, Barcelona, Atlanta, the balance beam gold, what do you feel and how do you feel, about everything that you accomplished at such a young age?
It's a little crazy to think about. So Barcelona, you mentioned, was 1992, the Olympics in 1992. And that was my first Olympics, and I had just turned 15. But it was also an incredible experience leading up to the games. I had actually broken and dislocated my left elbow about 10 weeks prior to the Olympic trials that year. And it was one of those moments in sport and in life where you think, everything I worked for, all of it just gone in an instant in one mistake where I landed wrong. And I remember my coach, they put in, I'd gone into surgery that night, and they put in a screw to hold the bone together. And I remember being taken out of the hospital the next day, and my coach met me at the door, and he looked at me, and he could have said lots of things about, well, this just isn't in the cards, or well, maybe next time, or all those things. And he didn't. He just looked me in the eye and he said, okay, we have some work to do. I'll see you in the gym tomorrow. And it was that
Wow.
one thing that I needed to hear. It said basically what he was saying was, "I believe in you. If you wanna do this, I believe in you." And it allowed me to believe in myself, and I think that moment kind of has always stayed with me when I come upon a challenge or I think all is lost. It's that one moment where it's okay. We've got some work to do. How are we going to do this? And so to be even competing at the games in Barcelona that year was amazing, and to be able to walk home with 5 medals was crazy. But to come back as part of the '96 games in Atlanta, which will celebrate the 30th anniversary this year,
Wow.
which is crazy. But that was so special. Just so amazing to be able to compete on home soil and to finally get that gold for the team, and then cap that off with a gold on balance beam, which was, I think, my favorite event growing up. It's just so many special memories.
That's amazing. And I love what you said, the philosophy your coach said, all right, we've got some work to do. Because like you said, it could be so easy to just put a band-aid on it and say, well, maybe next time. But the fact that he saw you as a true competitor and someone that would rise to the challenge, I think is just so amazing, and something, a philosophy that you carry through, obviously, through the rest of your life.
Oh.
And so after you had retired, you had left gymnastics, and then you went to law school. And you've built a career in entrepreneurship and advocacy. And so what led you in that direction?
I think it's a culmination of things. I think when you retire retire at such a
Right.
young age. I was 19 when I retired from Olympic sport, which is the only thing I'd really ever known other than my education. You really do kind of go through a bit of an identity crisis as far as what comes next. I've always had a goal. I always knew exactly what I would get up and do every single day, and now I don't really know. And so I was very fortunate. My parents had really focused on education. That is your foundation. Sport will come or go, but your foundation is your education. And so when I continued on with college, I was able to kind of focus and try different things. I did a lot of ended up really challenging myself to speak because I was so shy. I would never have done an interview like this or spoken in front of audiences. And I really challenged myself to
Mhm.
come out of my shell. So I started speaking, which opened the door to broadcasting and commentary for the Olympics, which was amazing. But I didn't feel like that was like a full time thing. So I kept with my education, and I had taken a business class, a business law class, and I thought, well, I don't really know a lot of what I'm doing, and even just signing my own contracts, as now a 22-year-old person with different work and different endorsements. I need to know what I'm signing. So I took the LSAT and thought, well, if someone lets me in, I'll go to law school. And I ended up going to Boston College, and it was great. Another great foundation for building my first company and then my second, and really helping me understand things, and really helping me create an identity outside of sport. I will always be a gymnast. I will always love that title and that energy, but I'm also more than that. And so it kind of helped me bridge the gap to kind of the next thing.
No, and I love what you said at the beginning is that you've lived several lifetimes. You've lived several lives, within your journey, and that's the focus of this show is who we become, life beyond change. And so having that identity as a gymnast, and now moving on to, um, continuing your education. And so, what did that transition, after you retired again at so young at 2022, into moving more into focusing on education and entrepreneurship? What did that transition teach you about identity that maybe you hadn't learned while you were living in that world of sports?
I think in gymnastics, my identity was easy. It wasn't just as a gymnast. I was a daughter. I was a sister. I was a student. So I always had multiple identities. My parents really made sure I understood that gymnastics is not life. Life is life, and so it's not just sport. There's a whole life out there, and I think that was a good thing that they kind of reiterated during my younger years. But then when you get out on your own and you're kind of hit with that, ooh, there really is a whole other world out there, and now I've got to figure it out. I think, that becomes a little bit more challenging. And for me, when I retired from sport up until I kind of started to figure out what I wanted to do and where I wanted to put my focus, it was a lot of searching. It was a lot of just being curious and failure and starting things and not really knowing where they were going to lead, but just trying new things and challenging myself, just like I would a new skill in the gym. Can I speak? Well, let's see. Let's
Mhm.
practice it and figure it out. Can I commentate gymnastics? I've done gymnastics, but can I talk about it? Well, let's see. And so there was a lot of trial and error, and some things stuck and some things didn't. But you have to get out there and try and kind of figure it out, not get too wrapped up into who am I? What is my identity? Instead, just like, you don't have to name it, but just go try things. Just go
Yep.
kind of go figure it out. And so I did that, and I really started understanding where I was kind of flawed, where I wasn't um, staying up with things, and that really was my health and wellness because that had always been done for me. I didn't have to think about working out or being physically active. I was in the gym 40 plus hours a week. I
Right.
didn't have to think about what I was eating because I could eat whatever I wanted. I was eating 6 full meals a day, and I was burning, everything off. So when I stopped, I I didn't get away with that. I couldn't eat 6 full meals a day, which I found out pretty quickly. I didn't know how to be physically active as a non-elite athlete. I'd never been in just a regular gym where there's a treadmill and weights. I'd never lifted a weight or been on a treadmill. It's not what we
Sure.
do. And so health and wellness and fitness became a very curious thing for me. And I would see women around me that had put everything on the back burner, all of their health and wellness, not going to doctor's appointments, not being physically active, not having a good diet
Mhm.
regimen, not getting enough sleep. And I thought, is there a way that my platform built through sport could help kind of showcase that, help women make their health a priority, and that's kind of how I focused on my first company, which was exciting, and I really enjoyed that.
That's amazing, and I just want to acknowledge and thank you for, for bringing voice to trying things. And, you had said you tried some things stuck, some things didn't, but you always had that curiosity. And I find sometimes we're just afraid to try because we don't want to fail. But then we don't always figure out what it is we want to do. And so I just want to acknowledge that. And I think that's a message that is really worth repeating, is that we often have to try things, even if we're not comfortable, just to see, if it's something that interests us or something that brings us to a new passion, like you had discovered health and wellness. And so I'd love to then transition. You had built a company focusing on health and wellness, and then in 2011, you received your own health diagnosis. And so would you be okay kind of walking us through what that experience was like?
Absolutely. So 2011 was when I was officially diagnosed, but it really started back in 2010. And 2010 was a pretty good year for me. I had launched my company. And I was actually hosting a radio show at the time, interviewing physicians, nurses, health experts on all these great topics. And in the fall, we were talking a lot about cancer awareness and the importance of early detection and getting to your regular exams and screenings and all the good stuff. And it was about that time that I kind of looked at my calendar one day and, oh, I've got this appointment coming up, my own appointment,
Hmm.
but I was going to be out of town for work. And so I called up and I was completely going to cancel it. Complete transparency. Maybe, put it off till the early the next year after the holidays, all of that. And I called up and I was put on hold. And I remember thinking, just there was just huge weight because I was not walking the walk. I was not doing the thing that I was asking of others. Just, hey, make your appointment and get there. Just,
Mhm.
just get there. And so when the receptionist came back on the line, I shared with her the issue, but said, I hate to wait too long. Is there a cancellation list or something? And she said, "Oh, this is great because that was a cancellation on the other line. Can you come over this morning?" And it was that morning I did. I drove over there, not even thinking about whether I was healthy or not. I'm, just thinking of all the things I need to get back to. But that was the appointment that morning. In about 15 minutes, I got the shock of my life. They found a baseball sized cyst on my left ovary. And that sent me into a whirlwind of tests and scans. And then by January, I was officially diagnosed.
Oh my gosh. I just I, I just want to thank you for sharing your story because early detection, women, especially with so many priorities, oftentimes put ourselves on the back burner. And
Yeah.
the advocacy work that you were doing and the fact that you went in yourself and discovered this lump is just it can't be understated the importance of advocating for yourself, keeping up with your
Yes.
appointments and putting yourself first sometimes when it comes to your health. And so I want to thank you for using your platform to share this. And so you were diagnosed and then you had aggressive chemotherapy. And one thing that you had shared was really having this competitor's mindset
Yeah.
going into treatment. And so what did that actually look like as you were going through the treatment for your cancer?
Well, and I'm always very clear. I did not have the competitor mindset from the very start.
Of course.
The 4 to 5 weeks of what they call wait and observe was a little bit excruciating. Walking around like a zombie, having no idea what was going on, what was to come. Was it cancer? Had it spread? Our son was about a year old at the time. I mean, the days of is my is my son going to have a mother? Uh, it's those were, I think, the toughest days. Well, there's nothing easy about cancer. It's all tough. But that was a really, really tough stretch there. And then after the diagnosis, everything moved very quickly. I woke up from surgery, found out that it was cancer. 2 weeks later, I found out it was a higher malignancy than they originally thought. I would need to go through this aggressive chemotherapy. And that's when that competitive mentality started to click in because now I had a roadmap. I could now be a part of something. I could be a part of my own health journey because there was something I could do. I could get through chemo without stopping. That was the only goal that my doctor gave, that my oncologist gave me. We need to get through without stopping. And so I was trying to figure out hydration and protein. I couldn't do much physically after the surgery. I wasn't even allowed to hold my son for 4 weeks, but but I can do this. And so I started to try to get into the mental space, and faith is first and foremost. And so it was kind of one of those, put everything in God's basket as I could, and then figure out what I can handle. And I'm giving myself these great pep talks because we do that as
Of course.
athletes. And I felt like I was ready to go. And then, man, chemo can humble you like you've never been humbled before. And that's when I had to really dig in. And it was, I think, really that first week of chemo that kind of brought me to my knees and said, okay, like this is not your normal everyday competitiveness. You've got to think about this in a very different way.
Absolutely. And you don't know what to expect until you're in it, right? And
Yeah.
I just yes, having gone through chemo too, I and with young children, it's just cancer is hard, but cancer with young kids is just a whole different experience.
It's a whole other layer of mental, physical, emotional.
Absolutely. And so, when you reflect back now, once you finished treatment, you made it through, is there something that you would share with other women who may be currently undergoing treatment or supporting someone with ovarian cancer or any type of cancer that was helpful for
Yeah.
you or something that you wish someone had told you at that time?
Yes, absolutely, because there are things I learned throughout the journey or was reminded of throughout the journey that I wish I had really thought more about and processed more before I got started or a little bit earlier in the game. And part of that is from that kind of competitive mindset or what I look at to those lessons learned through sport. Part of that's goal setting. And I'm really good at goal setting. It's like this weird thing. I'm just really good at it. But in cancer, it's different, and I had to
Mhm.
switch my goals, which was fine because I've always understood goals don't have to be the Olympics. They don't have to be huge. They just have to get done, and they have to give you something to reach for. So oftentimes my goal was to walk around the dining room table 2 times, and then that would be a good day. So being able to set small goals and be okay with that, give yourself some grace on what those goals actually are is so
So
important as long as you're kind of overall moving forward, not every day, because you're going to have some days where you take a couple steps back and that's okay. The other thing I would really stress is team. And I just completely left that behind in sport when I ventured out into real life and certainly in my health battle. I just, for some reason, I thought I needed to do this myself. I didn't want to be a burden. I didn't want to complain. I didn't want to bother anyone. People were, already asking how they can help. And I'm fine. It's okay. Everything's okay. I'll just do it myself. You're not going to do it yourself. And you don't have to. And that's what I want people to know. Not only is there strength in accepting help when offered, but there is such strength in asking for help when it's needed. The idea that I would train for an Olympic Games by myself, that would be absurd. I needed my coaches and my parents and the people that put the equipment up and my teammates and all of the things. Why wouldn't we need that in life? Why wouldn't we
Mhm.
want that in our health? So just don't ever be afraid to ask for help, to accept help, because it's also, again, having been on the other side of this, my mother's a two-time survivor. Having been on the other side, it is such a blessing to
Mhm.
accept that help from someone who's offered because on the other side, on the caregiver, on the loved one side, you feel such at a loss of understanding what can you do? How can I help? What do they need? And if someone would have just said, your mom needs this. Go get these 3 things, do these 3 things. I would have said, yes, absolutely. I would have dropped everything and I would have done it. I just didn't know. And so there is such a blessing in accepting that help and letting people help you because they so desperately want to. So you're not putting anyone out, you are also being a blessing to others by accepting that help.
I love that, and that's been a common thread through where, those who go through any type of hardship, to use your words, they didn't wanna be a burden. They didn't want to put someone else out, but on on the other side, people want to help and they want to feel like they're contributing even, as they're walking through the physical journey alone.
Yeah.
And so with that, being able to do caregiving, and that led you to a new business. And so I would love to hear about how you transformed your experience, both as a patient and a caregiver for your mom um, into your new venture and what that looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been 15 years now. I just celebrated 15
Wow.
years cancer free last week.
Congratulations.
So thank you. It's just a little surreal, actually, but it's such an amazing milestone. And I think throughout the last 15 years, working in the cancer community and really so many different areas. It has been wonderful, but it has always weighed on me. I can go out and I can speak to survivors and hospital systems, and I can advocate, and I can talk about early detection and signs and symptoms, and I can help raise funds for
Mhm.
nonprofits and all of the research, and all those are great things. But I always felt like, but there has to be more. What else can I do? I can't cure cancer. So what can I do? And that's really where I started thinking about the questions I get the most. I hear the most, and that is on the survivor side. You hear, what do I need? Like, what do I even need for chemotherapy or radiation or surgery or recovery? And on the loved one side, friends, family, neighbors, coworkers, how can I help? Like, I will do
Mhm.
anything. What can we do to help? And so I really was just it had just been on my mind, how can I bridge that gap? And really that's at its heart what Salto Health is all about. Salto Health is about connection. We help patients and caregivers discover the products and resources and the support that can make that difficult journey just a little bit easier.
Mhm.
We help loved ones move beyond asking, how can I help, to actually providing that meaningful support that truly meets a very specific need. So Salto Health is basically, it's a highly curated site that offers a free support, or what you would think of as a gift registry, so that you can easily find what you need during cancer treatment, during your recovery, and then share those needs with loved ones who want to help. It's all about organizing care in a meaningful way so that we're taking the burden off of the caregiver and the survivor who are already overwhelmed. They are exhausted. They're already coordinating all of these other things, daily life that they're already doing,
Yep.
and the appointments and, the insurance and just all of the things. They don't also need to be coordinating the 50 people that just sent them a text to say, how can I help? They don't need to be coordinating the 14 people that brought over casseroles this week,
Right.
but, you're in chemo, so you can't eat it, you can't taste it, you can't smell it. you know, it gives caregivers and survivors a way to easily organize that support, allow loved ones to help in a meaningful way, and actually get the exact items, products that are needed during the cancer journey to the patient, which is so important. And it really helps with treatment adherence. When you handle nausea support and hydration support, when you have all of these products that are available now, which I never even knew that they existed when I was going through it. Specific things for skincare during chemotherapy, during radiation. I mean, it is really just fascinating, and I've learned so much throughout this process of all of the different things that are out there, and it's so amazing to kind of be able to bring it all under one umbrella and say, okay, we've done all the work for you. Now, in under 5 minutes, you can put together a registry and let people help you. And then you can go and focus on what matters most, and that is healing.
That is so incredible. And I'm reflecting back on my own journey where I didn't know anyone else that, was going through cancer treatment. And so when people would ask, what do you need? I don't know. I have no idea. And so what I just feel, if this resource is going to be such a blessing and a benefit to anyone navigating either the patient or the caregiver through treatment. And
I hope so. It is definitely a passion project, but we're already seeing so many people benefit. So I'm very excited.
that's incredible. And so, just based on your own experience now with this curated list on Salto Health, what do you find a survivor may actually need? For anyone listening who may have someone who
Yeah.
wants to support someone going through treatment, are there just a couple items that you would recommend?
Oh my goodness. Well, there's so much. But what we've done is we've tried to make it into bite-sized chunks. So it's very easy if you go on and you're having chemotherapy, you can click on chemotherapy bundle and see what are those typical items, or radiation or surgery. Um, But I would say, for patients going through chemotherapy, the things that come to mind, you might want something for um, clothing that has port access, so you don't have to get undressed in the cold every time you go to infusion. Skincare, which is so important. I didn't realize how sensitive and dry my skin was going to be. And there's specific skincare that's available for that. Great skincare for radiation as well. In a fair amount of chemotherapy, there's going to be hair loss. Not all, so that's important to note. But if you're going to have hair loss, you may not know that it kind of can hurt sometimes. And so you need to do some scalp care, as well as if you want to have a wig or head cover, something soft to help regulate your temperature. That's another thing you want to think about, is regulating your temperature. So we have things on there like cooling sheets and even cooling pajamas, because there can be those swings. You freeze when you go to the hospital, but man, you're just dying in the middle of the night. Nausea and hydration support are really big ones, because what happens is, beyond the hospital walls, everything's good when you're at your appointment
Oh,
because they
yeah.
can take care of you right there. But most of the journey, most of the cancer journey is lived at home when you don't have that immediate support. So having the nausea and the hydration support at home is really important. Sleep is so critical. I mean, it's critical for all of us
Right.
anyway, but it is a critical component to, healing and to feeling better mentally, physically. So being able to sleep, and whether that's, a certain type of pillow after you've had a mastectomy, which also helps with surgery recovery, if it's essential oils or other items, sleep is so important to recovery. So, I mean, there's so many different things I could kind of list off. There's the comfort items, because again, oftentimes people think of, oh, well, do they really need a new robe? Well, yes, because your skin can become so sensitive that having a certain material on your skin day after day is really important, and it can really make a big difference.
Amazing. Well, thank you for, and I love what you said. You've made it into kind of bite-sized, easy to understand, easy to help support someone, regardless of where they are on their journey. So thank you for that. It's just amazing.
Well, and I will share, one of the things that I really wanted to make sure was it was also somewhat educational. So instead of just having products, so we're not just a product marketplace. We want you to understand how these things can help, not just for the survivor, but for the caregiver and family and friends, to kind
Mhm.
of help understand what you're going through without having to ask and have awkward conversations. So with every product, certainly there's the description, but we also placed a why it matters section, so you can understand what this is, but why it matters now for this specific treatment that you're on. And so we're also helping educate, which I think also helps you feel like I'm not alone in this. There are
Mhm.
others that have gone through this, are going through this. I'm not alone. I'm not the only one that feels like this today. And that is so important, because the connection, the humanity, the human touch is really, really important in all aspects of life, but certainly during a cancer diagnosis and treatment.
Absolutely. And the education piece too is so critical, because sometimes it can be overwhelming as a patient to answer
Yeah.
several questions coming from all angles. And the fact that you have it there as a one-stop shop, is just so incredibly beneficial for anyone involved, either on the patient or the caregiver side. And so as we close, Shannon, again, I want to go back to what you said at the beginning, is that you've had several different identities, that you've
Mhm.
integrated through your life as a wife, a mom, a cancer survivor, a Hall of Famer, an advocate, and an entrepreneur. And so, who have you become now, and how do you hold all these identities, at once, with everything that you've been through?
That's a tough question. I'm not even sure I hold all of the identities or wear all the hats at one time. I think I kind of have more of one identity during different times. If I'm, doing gymnastics commentary, I'm more of a gymnast. If my kids come home from school, well, I'm mom. So, these are all, I think, layers of identity is how I would maybe think of it in my mind is they're all part of who I am. Take the good, leave the bad. And yes, they're all layers of kind of who I am and have given me great depth to learn from. The failures and the mistakes are as beneficial as the successes. I would say actually more beneficial than the successes because I learn more. I learn more about myself. I learn more about how to move forward. So I feel like, identity isn't just a one time thing. I don't know that anyone can say, okay, well, this is my identity. Maybe this is my identity for the next 5 minutes. But for me, it's just about kind of this molding of my general character and who I am. And I'm not sure that my character has really changed from the time I was 9, but maybe I'm a little bit wiser. Maybe I'm a little bit more curious. Maybe I'm a little bit more weathered and able to deal with the challenges as they come because of the different identities and the different experiences.
That's beautiful. And thank you. 'Cause right. We're a combination of all of the experiences we've been through and certainly shift depending on, to your point, what situation we're in. And so, Shannon, thank you. A woman who competed at the highest level the sport has ever demanded, and then discovered that the hardest fight of her life had nothing to do with gymnastics. Shannon Miller's story is a reminder that identity is not a fixed thing, that who we become after the gold medal, after the diagnosis, after the thing we never planned for, is the truest version of us. And so, what I hope you carry from this conversation is simple. The medals were evidence of what she was capable of, but it's everything that came after them, the advocacy, the building, the refusing to let her experience go to waste that tells us who she actually is. And so, if you or someone you love is navigating a cancer journey and you're looking for support, resources, and community, please visit Salto Health. We'll link all of the resources and Shannon's socials in our show notes. And Shannon, thank you. Thank you for your honesty, your advocacy, and using your platform in service of every woman who is fighting a battle that no one can see from the outside. And so until next time, take care of yourself, take care of each other, and keep becoming who you're meant to be. Thank you for joining me today on Who We Become. I hope this conversation reminded you that growth isn't always easy, but it is always meaningful. If this episode resonated with you, please share it with someone who might need it. And if you haven't already, be sure to follow, rate, and review the show. It truly helps these stories reach those who may need a reminder they are not alone. Remember, what happened to you is part of your story, but it is not the end of it. You are not defined by what happened to you. You are shaped by how you rise. Until next time, take care of yourself and keep becoming who you're meant to be.